Hi guys, just want to go over the Babyhawk R 3-inch version and tell you about my experience with it. I've had this thing for a few weeks now and I beat the heck out of this thing. I can honestly say this is not a beginner model. This is not something you want to jump right into. But I think I bought it right at the right time. I was flying a little micro whoops, tiny whoops, and I was getting, anxious or interested in seeing what a little bit bigger, faster, more powerful guy would do. And this really fit the bill. It is such a nice flyer. It is a hands full. I'd say FPV is fine for a beginner. When you fly this LOS, be careful when you pop that sucker into acro mode because this thing wants to flip and roll and it's so tiny, and if you don't have different color props on in the front and the back, orientation is nearly impossible for me anyway. So really be careful with it. And you see a lot of videos out there, people fly LOS and yeah, they wind up being SOL because it flips so fast, and I've seen a lot of people pile drive it, but it takes a beating. So, I mean, you don't have to worry too much. You don't want to be on concrete if you're going to try this thing at LOS, in my opinion, line of sight. So this guy's a beast. I really recommend it. Once you get confident with a little tiny whoop or maybe another larger drone, I'd say move right away to this. Really good. The characteristics are great. You're not going to have a bad time with it. It's not frustrating. I'd say it's one of the best flying RC vehicles I've ever owned. I can honestly say that. So yeah, it's a really smooth flyer. It does every trick imaginable. It is light. You feel it when there's wind. If you go up to do a trick and you lay off the throttle, it gets pushed around once in a while. So remember, it is not a full-on FPV rig. It's just a light micro. So it is going to be subject to wind and objects a little bit differently than a bigger unit. Now, I have just had a blast with this. I'm really pushing my FPV limits with this. I'm learning a lot of new things, a lot of new tricks, how to drive, fly under obstacles, over obstacles, around things, and it's really been a help for that. This capacitor gets in the way. It's right in front of the charging port, and it always bends up. And so, not the charging port, it gets right in the way of the USB adapter for Betaflight, the programming adapter. It always pushes up near there from crashes, holding it, moving it around or whatever. So you always have to pull this down to access it. I'm afraid at some point, when you bend metal back and forth, eventually it breaks. So I'm afraid that's going to happen at some point. Hopefully not in the near future. That's one of my big pet peeves about this. And the other is when you do need to get inside to the board or the camera or something like that, you have to unscrew these two screws, these two bolts, these two screws, and these two screws, and it's just a hassle because there's also on these front ones and this rear one, which I don't have in right now because I'm not going to put back in. I don't feel it needs it, but it's just a big hassle to get the little nut that these bolts go into in there. It's just a real pain in the neck. The front ones is a little easier, but this one really gave me a hard time, so I stopped putting it in there. And I can't think of anything else. The strap that came with the original strap that came with it broke easily. Like second crash, it ripped. So I had to find my own straps for it. And the receiver antenna was getting into the prop, so I had to put a little zip tie here and tape it to it. That seems to be working out fine. And that's really the only problems I've had with this, I'd say 99% of my time with this thing has just been a really good experience. No problems at all. The hardest part, I think, was binding it to my transmitter because of where the receiver's located. Other than that, this thing was a beauty. And you'll see in some of my videos here, I take a beating, and one of my videos, you could see the props are all mangled up, and it's still flying somewhat smooth. The flight controller is very stable, and the PIDs that they give you with it out of the box are amazing. I've been flying it with a 3S, 550 milliamp, and I get like 4.5 minutes of flight time, and I'm going at it pretty good. I'm not just cruising around. I get loads of flight time, and getting lots of training on this thing. And you know, if you just go out and fly it in a regular grass field, you're not going to beat the heck out of it too much because it takes a beating to begin with. And on the grass, really nothing I've done out there has harmed it. It's when I hit trees and concrete and fences. So this guy's a beast. I really recommend it. It's really good. The characteristics are great. You're not going to have a bad time with it. It's not frustrating. I'd say it's one of the best flying RC vehicles I've ever owned. I can honestly say that.